Spontaneous speaking in tongues and seeking spiritual guidance during spiritual awakening. Background. Divine Igor Vamadeva, you spoke of glossolalia as kriya. I have had speaking in tongues for several years and have always wondered what I am saying and to whom I am speaking. As an aside, I have identified the language as Tamil. This happens spontaneously many times a week. I had a spontaneous Kundalini awakening in 2009, and it has been quite the roller coaster. As I have really had no one to guide me, as you suggest is so important. Question. Can you elaborate on speaking in tongues? Much gratitude. Sure. Well, for those who don't know, the language identified here is Tamil Nadu province. It's South India. It's an ancient language with its own rich history. But obviously it's also related to Sanskrit, as all the Indo-European languages. Well, what is there to say about glossolalia? It's an amazing phenomenon that many spiritual traditions in many parts of the world has been experienced and identified at some point among those who were undergoing these transformative phases of awakening. And in the sentence within this question, you're asking who is speaking to whom, and what are you saying here, and to whom you are speaking. Well, it's perhaps would give us a simple ground and understanding that all this is for the sake of that process. So it's not that the speaking comes from someone in order to deliver something to someone. The self speaks for its own sake, true to any speech, any chatter, true to the philosophical discourse, true to a friendly conversation, true to the speaking in tongues. Whether we speak to someone in so-called mundane level about mundane things, or whether we speak something in tongues in the altered states of consciousness, it's only one self that speaks. So this is first understanding, this is first adjustments to what is happening. All this rises from the depth of consciousness itself for the sake of consciousness. It's the first and primal understanding. Now, of course, this is spoken from that ultimate perspective. And on the relative sphere of life, where many, many laws of nature are essentially at play, this is indeed, could be perceived as a very perplexing phenomenon. Why some people experience this, and what is being delivered here, and why, where does it come from? It is probably coming from the layers and levels of collective consciousness, where simply during these transformative phases, when we pierce that, let's say, pneuma, when we pierce that layer that, if you will, metaphorically speaking, encompasses this individuality, we go beyond our individualized consciousness. This is what awakening is really about. We're piercing that layer of individualized awakening, and more consciousness is being experienced. And that is always and often accompanied by greater information. If prior to that everything was perceived and experienced in quite a coherent, cognitive way, where everything makes sense or doesn't, but it doesn't matter because it's all in relation to this, what is being remembered, what we know, what is our experience. Suddenly we pierce that layer and a lot more information is being released. Different kind of streams of information are there to tap into. And in some of the streams, we tap into the collectively stored or stored at the collective level information where one can tap into certain languages, certain ancient languages. I bet we can even tap to the languages that no longer exist, but they simply exist as that recollection. They don't exist in the domain of space-time where we are, but they exist in the collective level. Not always glossolalia is identified as a particular language. Sometimes it's very hard to identify it as a language at all. Or maybe what is not identifiable or hardly identifiable here belongs to the language that beings on this planet used to speak some times ago at some point. So, what to do about it? If you perceive something coherent, in a sense, if there is a stream enough for it to be cognized, and in terms of its content, write it down if you can, or try to memorize it. Who knows, maybe you're coming up with some amazing insights that might be useful. Again, useful for not just your own existence, but for the existence of the others. Of course, I'm saying that with due tongue-in-cheek, that not everything that comes on that level through these experiences necessarily is the information to be put down as a scripture in the making. Not everything is a revelation. Yes, there are history of revelations. These revelations comes as a necessity of time when the field of action needs to be restored, upheld, when certain laws where human beings have drifted away from need to be reintroduced. Then through the prophet, through the tongue of the prophet, certain knowledge begins to be expressed again. And these beings sometimes could even deny or refuse or ignore these experiences until these experiences become so persistent and so powerful, then there's no other way than to allow that whatever is trying to transmit itself. But since that's not your case, because I don't detect that, I don't feel that that's the problem, it's rather what I sense is a sense of curiosity there, and I would just simply allow that, enjoy that if you can, because it's bound to pass. It's bound to wane down and it's bound to disappear. Yes, there are glossolalias experienced at every emergence that we get together, even with those who do not usually have these experiences on their own. And we also have, as some of you know by now, even those who haven't been at our retreats, there is a phenomena of vocalization, humming, overtoning, all this kind of spontaneous vocalization, which also quite fascinating. And I don't advise anyone to make any conclusive statements about it. We're just watching and observing and welcoming all this as it comes, because we never know what it is in its essence, because it's very, very early to say that that is something that we can actually put to the analytical, through the analytical scrutiny of the mind. Best to be open to these experiences and see how we unfold from there.